Welcome to Beyond the Closing Table with Setco Services. In this podcast, we delve into the world of real estate and explore what happens beyond the closing table. Join us for insightful discussions and expert interviews that will change the way you see real estate transactions. Welcome to Beyond the Closing Table. I'm George Brandon Jr., sponsored by Setco Services. Today I have Chris Fox with Fox Construction. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. How you doing?
Thank you for coming in, man.
Well,
I'm excited about this.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've had a builder on yet.
Yeah,
So this is
it's a great way to start then.
Yeah, right. This is definitely a great place to be in construction.
Absolutely.
I guess depending what perspective you're at, but we'll get into that. First, I want to hear about your background. Where are you from?
Originally from New Orleans, moved here permanently in 2013. I first started coming up in 98. So the building that Cowgirl Kitchen is currently in Rosemary.
Okay.
Was one of the first ones that was built. You know, I knew the owner, used to be owner, developer, and, got up to the fourth floor of that thing in like 97, 98. I was like, wow, you can see everything.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, no. There's going to be a ton of stuff built. That was like before the Pearl, and there was nothing.
I was going to say that had to be.
It was early.
Like one of the few commercial buildings even here yet, right?
Yes.
And
it was the first one that went up.
Okay.
It was the absolute first commercial building, like on that strip that went up.
Nikki Nickerson would appreciate your
yes
nod to the Cowgirl Kitchen.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay. So
she owns the building now.
Yeah. I've had Nikki on. She's
okay.
on here before. We're old
she's
friends.
Good people.
Yeah, she is. It makes a good sandwich too.
She does. The turkey avocado is my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. So were you here just looking, or were you looking at construction? Or are you working?
I was vacationing here. Okay. And then in 2001, Jason Romero is a family friend. Like, my dad did the accounting work for his mom's dress shop back in New Orleans. Like, my dad did the accounting work when, his dad, Frank, had Romero's restaurant and the whole 9 yards. So,
wife helps his I think it's his sister-in-law or sister at Kiki keep their booking.
Yeah, that's
too,
his sister.
But from a different perspective, just buying stuff.
Right. Yes. Supplements the income.
That's right.
So
you were just vacationing when you were here.
I was vacationing here, and 2001, walked in the Shades to have lunch with Jason, and he hands me this business card that says, President Jason, Romero Construction. It's like, that's awesome. How'd you do this? And he's like, well, I went to LSU Construction Management. Now I'm building houses for retired people. That sounds like a really cool idea. So
that sounds very simple.
It was very simple.
Yeah.
So, it took me a couple of years to get squared away, but okay. To LSU Construction Management. I graduated in 09.
So how old were you then, if you don't mind me asking?
20.
Okay. So you were
20 when I met with them.
Okay. So you hadn't gone, were you at LSU at the time?
No.
Okay.
I had gone to a different college, for a while, and was just like, Well,
let's go back a second. How was your upbringing in New Orleans? Because I'm fascinated. I go to New Orleans all the time.
I grew up on the West Bank.
Okay.
So the West Bank in New Orleans. It's actually in New Orleans is a little bit funny because you have to go east to go to the West Bank.
Yep.
And it's Algiers. It's one of the few parts of like the West Bank that is actually part of Orleans Parish. That's in the true New Orleans area. So I grew up there till I was 14, and then we moved to what they call the North Shore. So there's New Orleans. There's a 24-mile bridge across Lake Pontchartrain to Mandeville. So I ended up
driven that bridge 100 times.
So finished out in Mandeville.
Okay.
And then went to Southeastern, which is just a little college. It's technically a university. It started out as a college in Hammond. Went there for a couple of years, then was kind of mulling around, and then
were you doing it? Were you working just like
odd
jobs?
I was working in restaurants.
Okay.
No, I was going to be a restaurant manager. That was like my whole big shtick.
Okay.
And then
that's management.
It is. Well, I tell you what though, like, going up to, I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So every time I went up to a table to, introduce myself, it was always the mindset of what can I do to maximize the value of this table? What can I personally say to them? How can I approach them? What joke can I make? What can I do? How can I better their experience? So that way, because they're only going to tip me the maximum a certain amount of money. How can I increase that? How can I make them go above and beyond? Or how can I at least get that maximum? So that's the way I always approached that portion of it. And then when I was like, as I got a little bit older, I was doing that from the time I was like 16.
I think everybody should wait tables.
It's a very humbling experience.
Well, it can be humbling, but as you said, customer service.
Yes.
sales in some aspect,
Yeah.
like where you were just talking
Absolutely.
about, even if it's just for 6 months. You learn how to interact with people, and you can either learn, hey, I want to sell myself and do this and, be good at, but it leads, as we're going to get into for you, especially,
Right.
it leads to other things, but it probably gives you a little bit of confidence too.
Absolutely.
Once you get interacting with adults, you probably started out as a little shy 16-year-old.
At 16,
grandpa chews your ass out over his country fried steak.
Absolutely. The kitchen's backed up and they're yelling at me like, nothing I can do about it, but I sit there smiling and nodding.
Yeah. Did your family vacation over here? Is that what?
Yes.
So growing up, you came over here?
Yeah.
I was the same.
Yeah.
A lot of folks from Louisiana, Baton Rouge, New Orleans come over here.
Yeah, and it's still a feeder community. It's not quite as big of a feeder community, but it still is.
Yeah, for sure. We get there. There's actually, I don't know if you know this. There's like Grand Dunes and Miramar. That's like heavy Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the little microcosms of areas like Rosemary for a time it's more diverse now, but heavy Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was talking about this on another podcast, these little microcosms along 30A where certain demographics and certain areas in what I call the SEC gravitate to.
Right.
It's unique. So if you're building in a certain area, like you're in Rosemary, you may, have interest in marketing in Atlanta. All right. So Jason Romero handed you a card. This is funny. I saw Jason at Mardi Gras a few weeks ago.
Okay.
But and you just decided, all right, I'm going to go into construction. That was,
well, my godfather had been telling me, to go to LSU, but he wanted me to go in for doing civil work, like road building and whatnot. Okay. In New Orleans, the roads are terrible and they always need to be rebuilt. So, it was job security.
Yeah, job security. I got you.
So, I had been interested in doing remodeling work and whatnot, and seeing, what Jason was doing. I was like, man, this place is beautiful. We've been coming up for, 3-4 years now. The place is beautiful. And one of the things I really like about construction is the scenery changes. You're building a job and it's 8-12 months. Yeah, you have a year warranty. And yes, there's, pre-construction portion of it. If we do design build as well. So, there may be some, 6-12 months of, design and, contracts and permitting, but the scenery changes. You're on the job site, boots on the ground for, 8 to 12 months, some of the larger like Camp Creeks, maybe 15 months.
Yeah.
But that's it. Then all of a sudden you're on to something new. I really liked that. It works to my personality because, when I graduated in 2009, there wasn't anything going on for building houses. Right. So I ended up doing, commercial construction, and these were like, 100,000 square foot schools that took 2 or 3 years to build. And that just was not that much fun. I mean, you're staring at the same walls for years, and it's just, there's job security in that. You start the job, you're going to finish it, but it's just
not quite as diverse.
No. And you're only working on that one project. So being able to have, 4, 5, 6, this year we're going to end up doing 8 projects. Nice. In the middle of COVID, we were doing 15. We're trying to, get back, figure out some marketing.
Everybody's trying to get back to the 2021 numbers, man.
I just want the number of houses because there was a lot of things that were going on during then that made it harder to, to make the appropriate amount for it. Mm-hmm. But now we've got a lot of that stuff figured out on the back end, and we don't have the COVID issues.
Yeah.
We're not worried about, the last window to come in is right at CO, which I had happen, just all kinds of good stuff.
The supply issues you're referring to.
Absolutely.
Than the bullshit that was COVID. Anyway, I don't want to digress on that. So was the construction program a 4-year program?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you were just same thing, like waiting tables while you were in school? Working? Or did you start doing construction yet?
So during my first 2 years, I was waiting tables, and then I was a non-traditional student. So I was able to get the Pell Grant to pay for the schooling portion of it, because, being a Louisiana resident, I was able to get, the tuition portion paid, but the room and board. So year 3 and 4, I ended up taking out loans because I got into the Construction Student Association, which is like the second largest student organization on campus behind like the the student government. There's like 170 students in there.
Construction Student Organization.
Construction Student Association.
Association. Okay. What the hell do they do?
There's 3 programs. So there's the NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders,
right.
The AGC, the Association of General Contractors, and then the ABC, the Associated Building Contractors. And the AGC and the ABC are both commercial, and then the NAHB is residential. And they have like competitions that they can go do. So we were, working on sponsoring that. We did tailgates, just all kinds of different like community activities. But not only that, it was also a resource because, being Southeast Louisiana, there's a lot of oil there, and the companies would use the Construction Student Association as like a barometer for what cream is going to the top to be able to pick from. So would be able to invite a lot of the bigger wigs or the recruiters to these events, and they would be able to talk to the people that are at least putting themselves out there to do something above and beyond just going to school.
Okay.
So it was the involvement with, recruitment portions of it, and we were able to set up a construction interview day, and it was something rare to the construction department, where in March, and I forget what it was for the fall, but would have between 40 and 60 recruitment, companies come in to recruit, and everybody, they would have time slots or whatever, would take over one of the, rooms and, go through there, and, people would do interviews or whatnot, and that's where they would, recruit a lot of their students from. But it was through the Construction Student Association that a lot of that stuff happened.
Okay. So they're hiring people when they're done with the program. Is that the goal?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I guess there's an association for everything, right?
There is.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you were doing commercial out of the gate?
Out of the gate.
Or did you get hired through one of those?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So it was levee building. So it was civil work, but I did that for a number of months, and the job petered out. And then I ended up going and working. It was not companies called Satterfield and Ponticus, but it was a school builder out of Texas that worked a lot in Houston and Dallas, that when Katrina destroyed a bunch of the schools, they went to, a neighboring state and said, hey, look, I hear you're good at building schools. We need a lot of schools rebuilt. So they called them in. And so I worked with them. That's where the school work came from. There was a couple of other things that they did, like the consolidated car rental facility at the airport, which was like a parking garage, and also took all the car rental companies. They had their parking lots, and they had like a little, small shack building, and they took all of that away and then just put them in one area and had like real booths that you would see. That's, in the 20th.
They're in the old airport thing now.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are.
Is that that's what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know why it's funny to me, but you got all those cars, and then the old airport just sits there.
Yeah.
And then, you look across with the new airport. It's just unique. I'm sure they'll blow that up or do something with it.
Absolutely.
So wait, did you build back the levees after Katrina?
Yes. So it was the Morganza to the Gulf Reach H3 or something like that. But
okay, what the hell does that mean?
That was like the specific like section.
Okay.
So
I got it.
You go to all right. So you're traveling down the Mississippi River. You go to the end of the world, and it's about 5 miles past that.
Okay,
is where we started, and it was the craziest thing I ever saw. They call it a drag line. It's basically an excavator for the water, but they have a borrow pit, which is where you take the dirt and you just pile it up. And we would pile it up like 5 foot high, no compaction, no nothing. You'd let it dry out for, I think, 20 days. And then you would start bringing in more dirt to, compact and build up the levee. I think it was like 13 feet. But,
okay. So you're working in the water, like dredging.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I had like concrete levees, like on the lake.
Oh no.
You're actually building walls for the river.
Yeah. This was
some people that, may listen to this are from Louisiana are like, what the hell is a levee?
Right. It's designed to stop the water from, crusting into
those big mounds you see, up against the river. So you're doing the dredge stuff. That's crazy. Cause you see that, not like that, but here when they every year have to fix the channel out in Destin and stuff and dredge, and then sometimes renourishment. But, all right. So you built some levees, you built some schools. When did you decide to make the big move over this way?
So 2012, I called Jason and I was like, hey, dude, I did what you told me to do. I graduated. You got a job for me. And he goes, let me think about it. But like January of 13, he calls me. He's like, look, I think I got something for you. So February came, interviewed with him, and he goes, all right, well, what's your goal of coming out here? I said, do exactly what you told me. Come build a house for retired people. He said, for yourself? I said, well, eventually. He said, well, it would make sense if, I bring you on for 2 to 2.5 years. It makes it worthwhile. If you're only going to stick with me 6 months, I can't do that. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So
it's a fair deal.
Hired on with them 2.5 years to the day. Called him, said, I very much appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm going on my own. He's like, you son of a biscuit eater. I know you.
He got mad. You told him to. He told you 2.5 years.
He wanted me to stay.
Well, you were very good. You are good. So, what? Were you single at the time?
No.
Did you have family move over here?
No. I moved over here with my wife. We got married in 2010.
Okay. All right. Cool. I mean, that could be a factor sometimes, if you don't have ties anywhere, family and that type of stuff, it's either pack your shit up and move to Florida.
Well, no. So when I met my wife, I was waiting tables, and one of our first conversations, she says, what are you doing? I said, well, I just signed back up for school. I'm going to move to Florida and build a house for retired people. And she looked at me and she's like, wow, this guy knows what he's going to do.
Yeah.
He's got something on the ball. And I just followed that progress, I was living in the
You had a plan. You stuck with it.
Yeah.
I give you that, man. I guess
it was tough though, because in 07, 08, I was still in school, and people were saying, well, what do you plan on doing when you graduate? I said, well, build a house for retired people in Florida, and I would get belly laughed at.
Yeah.
But 2026, here we are.
Have you seen what's going on in Florida real estate market? Yeah, we were in it. Well aware.
Yeah.
We survived on foreclosures and short sales.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
2009.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then we actually, and you weren't here yet, but we made money in like 09. Don't make as much, but the market was at least moving. It was the oil spill that killed us.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still here, of course, but if the market's moving one way or another in our industry, and in yours in some cases, you can make money.
Mm-hmm.
But, just can't, maybe your spread's not as big.
Right.
You got to sacrifice certain things. So
are you back doing remodels or different things?
Well, a lot of people, and when the economy starts to dip, all of a sudden the builders have been building 10, 15, 20 houses. They're doing remodels again because the work's not there. But, that's part of it. Then people who are nimble enough can ebb and flow. They survive and some don't. So you came here in 13, right?
Yes.
Okay. Went to work for Jason for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
To the day.
All
right. I mean, you got to say you laid your plan out pretty clear on everything.
Yeah.
All right. So what, I know that was always your plan, but what was the deciding factor? Was it just you had in your head 2.5 years, or you were ready? You felt confident enough on the home building? You learned enough?
Oh, I learned a ton. And one of the cool things about Jason was he really big brothered me. Like during the whole time, he was like, hey, Chris, if you're going to do something, you have to do this. And, one of the big things is, finding an interior designer who can kind of help you and guide you, and you really need to do this and you really need that. He would tell me these things periodically because I was a construction coordinator. So if you can imagine, you got the boots on the ground of the project manager, superintendent guys, and then I'm like the next level up. And at that point, Romare's grown significantly since 2015, but at that point there was only 7 of us. So it was the boots on the ground guys, me, and then Jason. So a lot of the stuff I was working with contract negotiations, with budgeting. So a lot of the conversations I would have to have directly with Jason and be like, hey, look, this is going on, we're winning this many jobs, our percentages are this and that. He and I would have like in-depth discussions, kind of like, business level, discussions. I wasn't just like a clog in the wheel. But he was able to, pass on some really good advice and information, during the whole time. So I think he knew, like in the back of his mind, when I told him, what my plan was, that I actually was serious. I've talked to plenty of guys and they have a plan. It's just for one reason or another, they can't execute on it. But I was like dead set on it. It was, this is what I was going to do and this is how I was going to do it. And I very much appreciate everything, all the opportunity he gave me and all the information.
Well, that's pretty cool to have called a mentor, and him willing to do that, because there's plenty of situations where I've seen where business owners, don't do that with people because they're intimidated by them. And then, they end up leaving anyway,
right?
Because they're not happy. And whether coach someone up and have an ally across the street that, I'm sure if Jason called, you'd probably help him if he needed something and vice versa.
There was a couple of things he called me for.
Yeah.
Well, after I left, he he still needed some parts of what I was doing done because he couldn't find somebody. And then I ended up training the next person that came after me. He flaked out, and then I trained the person that's actually still working there now.
So sounds like you got a pretty good, not only construction education, but running a construction company education, working for Romare Construction.
Absolutely.
Were y'all building mainly in Origins at the time, or
at that point, finishing up Summer Sweet Place, which is phase 4, and because of Jason's presence there, he got a lot of Cedar Woods, which was the other side of phase 4. And then it was like the ground level of the first 13 lots on Cannonball Lane, and then just had taken down the next series of lots. Gosh, I can't remember what the other one was. I think it was off of Breakers. But so it was at the beginning, entry level into Origins, and there was stuff.
That's still kind of that original section, around the clubhouse.
By the clubhouse,
yeah,
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what they were.
It's amazing when we go out there now.
Yeah.
Like
10 years later.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
just the. I mean,
scale.
it's not. It's a long time, but the scale that place blew up so quickly.
It's like 1,400 homes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I remember walking with myself, Jason, and one of the project managers, looking around at all these trees going, is this really going to take off?
Yeah.
And,
it was woods.
It was.
Pretty much.
It was woods and a 50-year plan on the wall in St. Joe's, in their office. Yeah,
we were part of that 50-year plan at one juncture. All right, so you decided to go out on your own. Have you saved a little money? You feel like you were confident what you were going out on your own? What'd you do?
I started out doing remodels. I had initially it was one home and 3 or 4 remodels. I was the typical guy with a cell phone and a truck, and I was running the remodels and, talking with real estate agents, going to open houses to introduce myself to new real estate agents and just making every contact I could, lean and hungry, hitting the ground running, trying to build something. And, slowly over time started, getting in with, architects and, draftsmen and more real estate agents. And, I didn't have a whole lot of good marketing background, and I'm still working on that, trying to market better, because one of the things that I knew was nothing breeds work like work. So I knew if I got work, people would see signs, but now so many people are looking online for the signs. They're not looking at once they come here. So I'm trying to adjust for that. But that was the one thing that I was able to do marketing wise, was get in contact with more people, which helped me to grow the business. I ended up, over time ended up, getting a couple of investors working with me, a couple of superintendents. And then 3.5 years ago, we opened up our brick and mortar in Blue Mountain Beach, where, speaking of Nikki, we're in between Cowgirl Kitchen and Johnny McTie.
You got 2 good bars on each side of you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, so when you decided to venture out, did you want to do spec homes? Did you want to do custom homes? You just wanted to be on your own because you had that entrepreneurial spirit? Did you have some direction? See, you had a plan for about 10 years before that, and you stuck to it. So what was the plan when you went out on your own?
Started working for Jason.
What was your initial plan? Not how it ended up.
Right.
What did you want to do?
Well, starting out for Jason, he was doing 12 to 15 homes a year.
Right.
And after about 3 months, I looked around. I was like, I can do this.
Right.
So that was honestly my initial goal, was to get to 12 to 15 houses.
Specking?
No.
Or just custom spec?
Doing custom.
Just whatever. Okay. All right.
Custom specs, investors, whatever.
Got it.
It's evolved over time, 40 to 60%, depending on the year, is investor, as opposed to, and, we really don't do a lot of speculative stuff. I've been more back end funding the business because I've always felt like a broader foundation is going to be better long term. I'm not young. I'm 45, but I know if I'm working.
Come on, man, you're young. What are you talking about? Don't talk that jazz around me. I'm 1 year older than you.
But, I know, I'll be doing this for 20 more years. So I've got 20 years. So I want to have a good foundation. It's why I wanted to have the brick and mortar. It's why I wanted to have, I've got an office manager, bookkeeper, marketing lady, 2 superintendents. I wanted to have that base to be able to grow. Not only that, but when I'm having conversations with potential clients, it gives them a whole lot of peace of mind that it's not just me. If I got hit by a bus, there's still somebody else
behind you
that can finish it. And if the superintendent gets hit by a bus, I'm behind it. There's just different parts and pieces, and that it's not one person. If one person goes on vacation, the whole company doesn't shut down.
Yeah.
So, but
there are builders out there that have that model,
and so it's been trying to develop that and get up to that, 12 to 15 homes. We were able to get there during COVID, but that was, kind of a falsehood because everybody, was able in our area, everybody was able to build as much as they could possibly handle during that time. But, like I said, 8 homes this year. We're trying to track it so that way we can, deploy, marketing capital or whatnot to be able to bump it up to 12 homes for next year. And then after that's going to be my big goal where we're going to be able to hopefully get to, what my initial goal was for that 12 to 15 homes.
So do you have a certain wheelhouse that you're in? And does it matter to design wise? I mean, it's pretty diverse down here.
It is. It seems like a lot of what we get selected for, I would much rather do, 5,000 to 6,000 square foot houses in, Camp Creek, watercolor, water sound, those type stuff but a lot of what we get selected for is 2,500 to 4,000 square foot homes. And it's in that, just under $1 million cost of construction up to $2 million, price range. Whereas like some of the Camp Creek stuff, I've bid a couple of them, and I've got an investor who's looking into buying a lot, but these are like $2.5, $3 million like cost of construction builds. Like I remember when I first, showed up, I saw Alice Beach and I was like, oh, look at the nice shiny object. Finding more about it, that's just that. That goes back to the commercial stuff. I always call Alice Beach, commercial construction with residential tolerances.
Oh, it is.
Because
very accurate statement. If you, the layperson just walking through there, it's beautiful. Like you said, look at this shiny coin, but it's all freaking concrete and Venetian plaster everywhere. I mean, it's pretty much about as close as commercial residential, neighborhood you get.
Yes. So, and that doesn't fit with my, desire and bandwidth for wanting to do, a year and a half pre-construction with somebody, 2.5 years building, and then a year. I just don't want to have that 5-year, outlook on one project. I'd rather it be a much quicker turn and burn.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, I think you mentioned like 12 to 15 months. I just kind of chuckled because, my house took a minute longer than that, but this is a different project, I guess.
Right.
But
it also depends on how custom it is.
Well, it's custom, but yeah. But so to that point, so are you doing full custom? Or you will do full custom, but you don't really want to buy into that ridiculous, over the top build.
We do not thrive on what I call the ultra custom.
Okay.
Let's fly this in from Italy type custom stuff. We just finished a gorgeous
You're describing
house.
Alice Beach perfectly.
Right. We just finished a really gorgeous house on 395 and Forest Street. It's got, cedar beams, cedar shiplap ceiling, all these cool elements, Wolf Sub-Zero package. We did underneath the stairs, we did this little wine room. So we did a media room where, just a lot of cool features in the house. But I'm talking about like the super like high end custom where, oh no, we've got to fly this one person in because he's going to build these 6 doors for the house. And he's the only person who knows how to build these doors out of this rare, whatever it is. We've sourced, true beams because you can only get 16-foot length material, when you're boxing the beams out. So if you want either true beams or something longer than that, you have to source it from, a lot of times we source it out of Louisiana. We've done stuff like that. Like, I'm not saying we don't do custom level, but it's like but it's that true blue stuff. Like we did one, carriage house where it was built into the roof system. So, they had all these, irregular roof pitches that you were walking underneath, and we shiplapped the whole thing. And it took the trim carpenter, I think, 3.5 weeks for this like 400 square foot place because he had to have his measurements exactly right and the cuts exactly right because everything was irregular. And we've done it in the past. It's just not something that
not your bailiwick. That's not your wheelhouse.
Right.
Where you want to be for your business model. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And I think there's, the need here is more in your range than it is that, 3 million plus.
Right.
I say need, not necessarily supply demand, because those houses are moving, but at the same time, the affordability of that, it's only
much smaller
people, and a lot of them, it's definitely not local,
right?
Depending, because the money that's coming from elsewhere has just bought all that up. I mean, you've seen it. There's not many of those little cinder block houses left in Seagrove.
No.
On the beach.
No.
You knock down a 1,000 square foot cinder block house from the 50s, and then they build a 50,000 square foot monster on there.
Right.
So, you mentioned a couple times the different challenges like COVID. And if you didn't make money in 2021 in this market, you probably needed to go do something else. Cause it's stupid. It really was. And I didn't like it.
It wasn't fun, but it was good money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we made great money, but it was also sloppy. It was, and I'm talking about my business. It was, I felt like the customer service suffered. We had to do drive-through closings. I think I killed it somewhere early 21 because let's say I'm a non-believer in all that messaging about COVID, but that aside, we're walking and doing closings with, we probably did one for you. I don't know if we were doing stuff for you at that time or not, but where we came out to the car, and did you ever sign papers in the car?
I think you'll let me in.
Okay. Well, you're special. So
I think Jet let me.
Yeah. It's because she likes you. No, it's for people for a period of time. We didn't let people in unless if we knew you. It was fine, I think. And I don't care at this point because it was all stupid. But, the customer service of taking someone who's buying their dream beach home and handing them their closing package in their car and saying, call me when you're done signing all this shit in your Mercedes and I'll come back out and get it. There's no customer service to that. It was driving me nuts, but it was acceptable because of the messaging of like, oh, well, I don't want to get COVID. But then, by August, people were coming here to flee everywhere else.
Right.
So it made for a different environment. What were some of your challenges then, even though, like you said, you probably built 15 houses that year, had a great year.
Right.
What were some of the different challenges then?
Homeowners wanting to walk through with masks in August. Now, I mean, we're in Florida and it's hot.
Oh, yeah.
And you're wearing full masks. Everybody's like huffing and puffing because they can't get enough oxygen. Because that was one of the bigger things. And then, clients complaining, oh, well, they're not masked and they're in my house. And I'm like, you're not going to take possession for 6 months. Like, there's no way.
Wait, you had clients bitching like about subs not being masked?
Yes.
Oh, that's crazy. It's probably still open, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even if it was closed, I mean, I can't imagine that the germs are going to not get taken care of in the final clean. Now,
I haven't heard that one yet.
We had the cleaners wearing masks because they're the last ones in. They were cleaning everything. But that was like the only crew we ever required for it. But, it was the havoc of not being able to get materials, the supply chain issues. So initially it was great because right as soon as that, March of 2020 for the next like 4 months was great because we were open. We were able to keep building, but nobody else could. Yeah. So everybody was way excited to sell us material because nobody else was selling.
Make money. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
that makes sense.
So it was great until, that August time frame. And then all of a sudden stuff started running out and they were getting back, some of the factories and some of the parts and pieces of it. And,
what was your biggest, like off the cuff?
Trusses and doors and windows.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
So doors and windows, appliances too, but appliances were easier to deal with because appliances, they would say, are 12 months out. That's just what they told everybody. Sometimes they get them in 8, sometimes it was 10. But it's at the end of the project anyway. It didn't really matter. But trusses are one of the first things. Doors and windows is one of the earlier stages. Mm-hmm. So, you pour the foundation, you start going up at the first floor, you need your trusses.
You're ordering.
Like they were 26 weeks out. And I'm like, how in the world can I get trusses in 6 months, like, and the permits were taken, I think, a month at the time, maybe 6 weeks. So it's like, I have that time. I have the time for the foundation. I can't wait 26 weeks. Like, what do we do? But they couldn't get enough people to show up, and they were, they're having problems getting lumber, and the lumber portion of it was fixable. Like, we buy things, they're pre-cut studs, and they're a certain length, and we just get them in that length. We were having to buy stuff in varying lengths, longer than that, and cutting them down. So there was a lot of waste factor for that. Sometimes we were cutting, 12-foot, studs down to, 10 foot, or 12-foot trues down to 10-foot studs. Yeah. So there was all kinds of complications, but we were able to figure it out. Paint was, sometimes an issue, but instead of using Sherwin-Williams, we may be using PPG, or we may be using something else. There was always an alternative for a lot of things, except for the trusses and the doors and windows. That was the biggest hang.
That makes sense. Did that, you talk about the waste, did that at that time, you sound like you're kind of a numbers guy, not kind of, that's kind of what you did with Jason. Did that shrink your margins any? Or did you care?
So it was a little bit difficult because I had signed up, the last person that I signed up prior to going cost plus, I started a price escalation clauses, and that worked for all but the last person. Because when I'm estimating a project, there's not enough hours in the day to sit there and go do a stud takeoff, and you can get, being a commercial estimator for a portion of time, there's programs that can, help you. You create assemblies. Like, these are all, like, somebody listening is going to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But, they're
construction nerd stuff.
Yeah. Very nerdy, very technical stuff. So, but there's ways
I would have appreciated that type of structure, but anyway, go ahead.
but there's ways to figure that stuff out, but there's it's virtually irrelevant. If the job is going to take, studs are, I think, $675 right now. If it's going to take 200 studs or 220 studs on $1 million build, is that 20 studs? Figuring out, are you going to hit that 200, or is it going to be 220? Isn't really going to move the needle enough to bog down the estimating and pre-construction process, because there's several things like that. So, I didn't have accurate takeoffs of the exact amount of studs and waste factors and all of that. And, we would go off of historical data. A home of this size, this many square feet, with this many square feet of porches, historically has been X number of dollars a square foot. And that's how we were putting the numbers together. And, so this last home right before I went cost plus was like, you're talking about the waste factor. It's like, okay, well, we had budgeted this and it came in at this. And they go, okay, well, give me your takeoff. I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, no, I want to know that I'm not paying for your screw up. I want to know that you didn't budget 160 studs and there was 400 used on the job. Of course, I didn't have that information. I went to the attorney and I was like, what can I do about this? He chuckled and said, you're screwed. So, so that was the end of it.
You are, because attorneys will usually come up some way to defend you and spend your money.
Yeah, no. He basically said, and it wasn't worth the fight. It wasn't a tremendous amount of money.
But so did you ever, I do, recall that time where the lumber prices were kind of crazy.
Yes.
Did you ever get burned on something like you said, $675 a stud?
Right.
Did it
was at
move?
14.
Yeah, well, I know. Did it ever move enough where you were like, all right, but I had to eat a certain amount here?
Well, the price escalation clause covered me for all but one of them. And then when I had switched over to the cost plus, I was able to inform the client as we were moving forward.
So give me the difference. Just people out, that haven't built a home, bought a home, built a custom home, the difference in, you have a hard cost contract with a price escalation clause, and that's for materials.
Correct.
Right. And then, or could be for materials and labor. And then you have a cost plus job. Give me the difference if you can, real quick. Or it doesn't have to be quick. It'd be long winded, whatever.
Well, the fixed price, you're set at a fixed price.
Right.
So that there's two sides of it, because most of the time fixed price contracts are priced higher dollar amount because there's risk on the builder side of it.
Yeah.
So I am building in a safety factor if I'm bidding something hard bid.
What is your normal, what is the normal percentage you would do?
It's an extra 5%.
Okay. So you buffer a 5% buffer for you.
Correct.
On your side. Okay.
Correct.
And they accept that you're giving them a hard price. If you give them $1 million,
it's a hard price.
You got $50,000 a buffer in there at least.
But one of the things that still comes into a problem, one of the reasons why I don't like the hard bid pricing is because it's no longer fun and conversational because they can't make small changes. I'm building for a real estate agent couple right now. And,
that could mean trouble.
Well, they're going.
I'm just kidding. No, I know.
They're going through and they're wanting to add this and this and this. They walked through with the electrician, I think twice, and we ended up with $6,000 in extras. And they're like, well, wait a minute, where'd that come from? And I'm like, well, I gave them the list and there were all these things. And they're like, gee whiz, I didn't realize it cost that much. And I was like, look, guys, I keep telling y'all along the way, this cost, this cost, this cost, this cost, and this cost.
But your cost plus now, right? So
Correct.
You're covered. Okay.
But they accept it now. If it was a hard bid, then I have to get the price ahead of time and say, okay, you're going to make these selections. And it's not fun because we're walking through and you say, I want to add these 17 switches. If it's cost plus, I look at you, say, that's going to cost more. I don't have the accurate pricing, but if you want this, we can perform this. If it's a hard bid, all of a sudden I have to say, okay, we have to stop what we're doing and I need to get you the pricing and you need to approve it because I can't do the work and then give you the price.
It's change order or what
Correct.
the business is called change order. Okay.
Yes.
But you can have a change. I mean, you have change order both ways. It's just cost plus.
It's changing the price, but it's more fluid.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's definitely more fluid, and I don't have to build in a margin of error, and it also cuts down on the, oh, come on, man, you can't do this for me. You didn't have this in your budget to do this extra for me.
No, I got to make money too. I'm with you on that one. I'm well aware of what a change order is.
Right.
But it's sometimes you don't realize. You think, oh, well, moving that socket over there and this over here, and all of a sudden, like you said, you got 16 items you just moved around. Mm-hmm. It freaking adds up.
It does.
And so I don't have like hard data in this. It's just personal knowledge of friends in other areas. It does seem more expensive to build in this area.
It is.
Is that a true statement?
It's a true statement.
Yeah.
So a recent example, builder from Atlanta contacted me and he's like, hey, look, there's this lot. How much would it cost me to build on that lot? This size, square footage, blah, blah, blah. I gave him the number and he goes, that's crazy. Why is it that much? And so I'm 100% transparent. I sent him my sheet. He goes, why is your framing material so expensive? And I was like, well, we have hurricane strapping and everything. And he's like, that's just crazy. Like, why? It's got to be more than that. I said, okay. How much are your studs? He goes, $4. I said, well, they're $6.75 here. He's like, you're getting gouged. I'm like, no, the land that those studs are sitting on locally is more expensive from property taxes and lights, and the gasoline is more expensive here than it is in Atlanta. The wages are more expensive here. So the person handling it, the person driving it, all of those things account into the pricing being, in this situation, 50% more for just the simple thing of a stud. Now, a lighting fixture, appliances, because they're sold in such large quantities across the country, the price is flat. Whether you're buying in Los Angeles or here, that fixture is going to be the same price. But just about everything else is variable pricing. Even paint is more expensive down here.
That's what I similar story but out of Memphis where I grew up. And I mean, they told me what their per square foot was, cost to build, a very nice elaborate house. It was, upper level trims and stuff like that. And then I told them what my window package was. And it's like, just because, I've told this story in the first custom home I built. Just old school mindset, where I grew up. I said, we put an alarm in, and I asked them, and they're like, you don't put sensors on the windows? And the alarm guy told me, George, that's basically bulletproof glass. They can cut through the wall before they cut through the window.
They do.
I'm like, okay, all right, well, that makes sense. And I don't need the sensor. Thanks.
Yeah. The fire department goes through the wall before they go through the window because there's a special saw that they have to bring out to get through it.
To get through the glass. I guess that makes me feel better about my windows, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, crushing it in 21, and then we go into 22, because I'm always curious. I know where, I can show you on a graph where the market on June 30th started going the other direction in June 2022. What have been your recent challenges over the last 2 years, and last 4 years, where the market had a pretty dramatic shift in our area where you could sell a house with a video in 5 minutes,
right?
Versus all of a sudden the brakes start pumping and interest rates are going up and all that jazz. How's that affected you guys on the building side?
Well, one of the things that I always enjoyed was doing the investor builds.
When you say investor, because that means different things to different people, and especially here, because
it's a spec build for somebody else. So if you came to me and said, Chris, I want to build a home, I want you to build it, and I'm going to go sell it.
Okay, so the end use is they're selling it.
Yes.
And you both make a little cheddar off of it.
Correct.
Do you have a model where you may share in cost or share in the top end to build it less expensive, or not as many of your fees?
There's two ways I've done it in the past. One, they hire me just as they normally would. And if they want any pre-construction or design or whatever, there's a different cost structure for that. The other way is that they're providing all the capital, at the end of the day, all the risk, because there's a certain margin for it. But, you're building a million, buying a lot for $1 million, cost is $1.5 million, and the house is going to sell for $3.8 million. So, once you hit real estate commission and closing costs, there's $1 million left over there. Now, let's just say the house doesn't sell, but for $2.6 million, it's a break even. Nobody makes anything. But if it does sell for the $1 million, under one option is that there'd be a 50-50 profit sharing at the end. I'm providing the construction company throughout the whole process. There's no construction fees paid. Like, I burden the cost of my superintendents, my general liability insurance, all the cost of running Fox Construction, I bear, and then that allows me to get because I believe in the area.
Yeah.
That allows me to get a higher percentage at the end, but also what it provides for the client is they're not having to pay interest payments or cost of money, however they're doing it, on my cost that they would be accruing, not only during construction, but from the time construction is done until the sale. And they have somebody who is highly motivated to get the house done quickly, on budget, and of the highest value that it's going to sell quickly.
Yeah.
So it's not everybody takes that option, but I'll do it in either way. I can only do so many of those because I can't run a whole company for, a year and a half with nothing coming in. But,
yeah, I get that. But it's the more, I'd say, risk taker entrepreneurial way.
Yes.
You like you said, you have a little more vested interest in the top end, to build it more efficiently, quicker, more effectively.
Right.
I get that. I like that model, but that's
No, I'll work with them on lot selection. I'll work with them on lot selection, design. We have one over in Blue Mountain Beach right now where I did, all the finish selections on it. And, a bunch of the real estate agents have, complimented how cool it looked and how great it turned out. And, we've done a ton of research on, the new trends, because the trends changed like 18 months ago from the, the white shaker cabinets with the, marble mimic countertops to a lot of these, beigey tones and this more earthy feel and this self-love and spa-like bathrooms, and just the whole thing has done a shift.
Sounds like my house. Anyway, so back to the challenges after the downturn, or I say downturn, it hasn't been, but we are very fortunate in this area compared nationally that the swing of the pendulum was not as bad, although there was definitely, 24 was not a record year for anybody, I don't think. So, but, that's another one in the reverse. If you're still here,
right,
then you'll probably make it if you made it 23 and 24. So what were some of your challenges you faced, whether business wise or just building industry as a whole?
The biggest thing was transitioning more towards, because we lost almost every single investor. There's only one. We had 7 at the time going into that, and we dropped down to 1. 1 came back, and we've gotten 2 more since then. But so we're back up to 4. But when interest rates are 9%, nothing's penciling out.
Yeah.
Rentals, aren't doing what they thought that they were going to do. I mean, it was a very difficult year to sell investors. And it was, like I said, it was only the one guy who's like, this is going to change. He ended up buying lots at good prices because for a year, nobody was buying anything.
Yeah.
So he was, he's picking up land left, right, and center for really good pricing. And I think we're finishing we just got in permitting the last one that he bought during that time frame. But, we were having to switch more over to the custom for client side. And that was something that we hadn't had. We were trying to, like, going from the 15, back down to the 8, we were trying to fill the gaps because we've had to increase, like we've been only, 30 or 40%, in recent years of, speculative stuff for other people, and 70%, which is part of the reason why, there was a pullback. Because if we wouldn't have had that, would it still be at, the 15 homes? Because we were rocking and rolling with getting our, 5 to 7 homes a year for somebody. They're going to live in it, or it's going to be a primary or secondary home, or, are they going to keep it as a rental? I've done several of those, but I don't qualify that as an investor because they're not flipping the property.
Yeah.
They have a specific end goal and they care about it. One of the ladies that I built 2 of them for, she still owns 2 more lots in Seacrest Beach, and we're back now that she's, realizing that, the sky isn't falling, in certain areas. She's back into the idea that, we may end up building on those last 2 of them, but she's going to end up either keeping them or selling one of the ones that we built prior.
But those allowed you to, survive.
Yeah,
float the company, keep your employees, keep everything chugging along.
Yeah. One of the good things that we were able to benefit from was, that expansive growth, because we were at 8, January of 2020, and by middle of 21 we were at 15. Now I had prepared some of that, but not for all of it, because like I said, when I first started working for Jason and he was doing 12 to 15, I was like, I can do this. What I didn't realize was that a lot of what he was doing was the watercolor stuff, and it was the Palmetto A, B, C, and D, and the Magnolia, and he also had Steve Dungan on, staff as the architect, so it was much easier because he was just doing stuff. It's not cookie cutter by any stretch, and these were gorgeous houses, but it wasn't true blue custom. I heard somebody say one time that a custom home is it's a unique thing. It's never been built before. It's a prototype. So, if you're building a prototype every time, you have new challenges and it takes a little bit longer. So once we got up to that 15, I was like, holy cow, there's some things on the back end that Romare didn't need, but I definitely do. So when things started slowing down a little bit, we started having afternoon meetings, me and the 3 superintendents, and we started hammering out procedures. We've got a 408-point checklist. We went through and created like full-fledged scope of work for every single trade. So there's just a lot of things that we did on the back end. Now that when I hire a new superintendent, I can hand him over a full-fledged binder of, I know you know how to build a house, but here's how you do it the Fox Construction way. And it also helps being able to take that time and use it in a positive way instead of just, fretting, still working on, trying to get new clients, but able to use it in a positive way, I feel like has, bolstered the company. So that way, if something were to happen, one of my superintendents gets hit by a bus, decides to move out of the area, whatever happens, the next person who comes in, I can hand them over this book and they know exactly how to build the way I'm asking them to build. They know when to call in this, when to do this, when that happens. So it's been really beneficial, that slowdown in production helped us to get a lot of the back end stuff, which now as, we're projecting things to start moving upward, we'll be able to handle that stuff a whole lot better. And what you were talking about, customer service, the customer, we may not have been doing drive-throughs, but, some of it felt that way. But now we're going to be able to stop that from happening and to be able to make sure that we're delivering on our promises, better and every time.
Yeah. Processes and procedures. Yeah. Being effective.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you a blunt question. Did all that come about because you got your ass handed to you by a punch list?
No, that came about because we were making the same mistakes.
Okay.
So the same things were getting forgotten during the process because a lot of the things weren't written down. It was, every superintendent knows you got to go when you're doing, right before your framing inspection, he knows you got to check this, and this. So he's going through his list, but if he forgets one part of it, or it doesn't have that reminder in front of him to say, okay, all right, it's framing. What do? I go through these 11 items. Okay, I already know this. This is silly, but they go and they never forget. they have a list they never forget. But if they miss something and then all of a sudden the inspector goes, hey, you didn't tighten this bolt down, you didn't do this, we lost a day because now we got to get the guy and we're not benefiting the subcontractor because now we have to call him and rush him out there. If we're checking this stuff while we're going along, we're helping the subcontractors make more money because they're more efficient and they're not having to run fire drills to keep us happy. So there's just a lot of good that comes out of that.
I like it. I mean, we have to have processes and procedures in our business, and I'm not sure all builders do, but just like title companies, all builders aren't built the same. So I said that kind of tongue in cheek to get your ass handed to you on your punch list, but in our world, a lot of the because when you're coming to us, whether it's a Romare, not Jason himself and their company, but that would be a good example where you've got a somewhat speculative model, but a high-end spec, some custom to it, depending when the people come in the process and put the contract in. I know y'all can tweak certain things, colors and stuff like that, but we see it on the closing side like this punch list. And, the builder's like, I want to close this out, or, owner, if you will, at the time. And then the buyer / future owner, they're holding their feet to the fire on this punch list. And by the time it gets to closing, we're either escrow money or they're fighting. And I'm like, I feel like there's got to be a better way. Do you feel like that has helped you with some of yours? The punch list, the back end stuff, your processes and procedures?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because part of it becomes transparency during the process, and part of it, one of the other things we added is an owner's portal, so that gives them 100% view at where the budgeting costs are, their change orders.
That's nice.
We give them weekly updates through there because the guys they'll do daily job reports. So they'll and there's like a list of 20 items and they'll fill out the items. But some of the stuff is these are superintendents. Some of it is, I can't stand the electrician. He didn't show up again today. So when we compile that at the end of the week, we have to take some of that stuff out. You got to be able to let the guys vent. You can't correct that. Some office.
You don't want that your owner seeing that, or
correct.
Investor seeing that in your portal, though.
Correct.
This electrician sucks.
What a dummy.
Yeah.
So. My office manager takes the stuff, throws the 5 days in the chat GPT, has it come up with the stuff. She takes out what she thinks she needs to and then sends it to the superintendent and he edits what he needs to. And then we send it over to the owner and there's like 3 to 5 pages. And we're also having the supers do a little, like just holding it almost like a 10-second reel from, Facebook, just to give them some kind of idea. Because we came up with this one because the social media lady was like, hey, we need more content. So it helps for the content, but also it helps for the owner. And it's providing that information to them in a way that they're used to seeing it, because they're used to seeing Instagram. They're used to seeing TikTok. They're used to seeing these ways, and they've seen hundreds of other, because if they're involved with us, if they're building with us, that means they've looked up something on social media. So that's coming to their feed, but now they're able to see their home going up in real time. And almost, I'd say 85% of the people we deal with are not here. They're out of town.
Yeah.
So, for those people, they love to be able to see it in real time what things are going on. But if there's something wrong, because we try to be as thorough as we possibly can, but, when somebody is calling, something one thing and we're calling it something different, there's always a possibility something's going to happen incorrectly. And so, no, I didn't want that, that door is supposed to be centered in that opening. I can see right now that it's not centered.
Yeah.
And we go to the plans and they say, oh, well, it's set on the plans like that. And they go, oh, no. In the meeting we had blah, 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 blah. And the notes are on, we use Buildertrend, on Buildertrend, their portal. We made that correction. Superintendent goes, oh, shoot, that's right. Okay. We'll get that corrected.
So your guys have access to the portal, uploading information, but the homeowner, investor, builder, or not builder, the investor, homeowner has access to it and like almost real-time data.
It's weekly.
Okay.
They get updates weekly.
I still think that's, to your example, 85% is the exact percentage of mail outs out of our 30A office of people that don't ever come to close.
Okay.
And, we've gotten pretty efficient with, we're probably the most efficient with the electronic closings and mail outs depending on lenders, but no one comes to closing anymore. And that's okay. That's actually more efficient for us. You know,
Right.
if I like the customer experience of sitting with you at a table. You come in for closing.
I do.
But you know,
you've closed one of mine.
Yeah, I know. And, you know, I enjoy that part of it. That's part of the customer service to me, is sitting at that closing table. But I haven't heard, not that it's not out there, but like a portal for the owner, because especially in this market where you've got somebody in Nashville, they may not be here for a month. And like, you're a great example of that door is supposed to be over there, and you catch it then before it's freaking drywalled in. You know, now the mistake costs you X amount of more.
Right.
That it would have if they'd caught it earlier on.
And that's the portion of it. So cost plus doesn't mean we get to sweep under the rug our mistakes.
Yeah.
So we don't get to bill the owner for our mistakes.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. And we have a separate line item that's buried, the homeowner never sees, on all the projects. And it's like where we put costs that go against, and it goes against, part of it goes against the superintendent's, you know, job bonus. But yeah, that's something that we have to take care of.
Processes and procedures. I mean, it's building a house, especially custom houses. I don't think it could ever be perfect. So, what are some of the trends you're seeing like today? Like in the last 6 months, let's say, because interest rates have definitely gotten better.
They have.
I'll share a tidbit of information. We opened the most refis we've had in probably several years last month. I track, you know, like you, numbers guy, I track kind of what we're doing. And one thing that stood out is we opened a bunch more refis than we have in a long time. So I hope that's a trend, because we've definitely have closings where 03, even, or excuse me, 23 or 24, where people were closing at 7.5. Well, you're below 6 now in certain markets. That's worth refining. So we're starting to see that, but I only share that with you because I think that'll go, you know, not only to buyers coming back in this market stronger because of the buying power, where borrowing money, even investors at 6%, can be beneficial for everybody. So what are you seeing?
We're dangerously close to stuff truly penciling out. Good. So one of the things that I am seeing a significant increase in are the people that are coming in that they are, for the owner side of it, that are going to keep it as a secondary home, is the value of the property. So somebody comes to 30A, let's just say 4 times a year. Their average spend is $6,000 on renting the home. So that's $24,000 a year that they're spending to come 4 times a year. And now all of a sudden they get to own the home, and they have all the depreciation stuff. With the bonus depreciation right now, it's significantly helping them with their taxes. And then you start taking that $26,000. I'm sorry, wait, $24,000. You take the $24,000 and you add that on top of it. And then you tell them, well, not only that, but all your vacations are tax deductible if you're doing something. You got to talk to your accountant, but if you're touching up the paint on here, or, fixing this, or calling the guy to get the electrical thing, taken care of. If you're doing stuff every day during your trip here, it's 100% tax write-off your whole trip. So there's just so many parts and pieces of it that when it's laid out and explained accurately, that it really makes a difference. And it goes from when the houses weren't cash flowing to now it's like, well, I may not be, having a cash flow in the house, but when you figure in the cost savings of, all the trips, not only that, but these homes, they rent 26 to 30 weeks out of the year. So you have, 20 weeks you can use it. Your brother, your cousins, your company, whoever's going to use it can use it. And then, you're getting all these other, discounts from, the depreciation and which I think this bonus depreciation from your side of it is going to create a ton of 1031 exchanges because I don't know when it's going to, what do they call it? Sunset. But, it's a big thing right now.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to help you with your 1031s too. So if those listening to 1031 tax exchange is rolling, one, basically moving your money to another property on the second home investment side. Not that anyone would ever do that with a second home, but to your point, it's not my decision. Like I'll fully disclose, like Chris said, call your accountant.
Yeah.
But it's, to your point, it's becoming, maybe it's not going to cash flow, but you can justify getting close enough to pushing and an improved quality of life of having a second home. We still have this, amazing beach. It's not going away. We have, 250,000 of our best friends here on spring break.
Right.
That took me a minute and took Chris a minute to park here in Rosemary Beach. So, there's still people that want to be here. It is a definitely special place. What's in store for Fox Construction and Chris moving forward?
The biggest thing right now is, we just started a podcast. Our second episode goes live today at 4.
I got to hear it.
Fox Construction Tailored Custom Homes.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
I love it.
And, we've been doing, more targeted, social media stuff, and, in conjunction, we're doing it basically podcast style for the YouTube channel, but, we're working on filming a lot of stuff for informational. Hey, here's what's going on with the lumber market. Hey, here's this neighborhood, and here's the differences in this neighborhood or this neighborhood. We're starting to push forward more of the large scale renovation stuff, because small stuff, if you need a bathroom redone, you're not hiring a general contractor for that. There's guys with cell phone and truck that'll do that. That was, in 2013, I'd have taken care of that. That's how you got started. Right.
You're not discounting those guys, but you worked your way up. That's
how you do it. Yeah. That's how that stuff gets done. But we're seeing a lot of people wanting to, add carriage houses, and people talk about adding a second or third story, but typically a lot of the things that they're trying to add it to, the fundamentals of the house weren't built that way to be able to sustain it. But, additions and that type of thing. We're starting.
That's a polite way of saying you stack it on there, it's going to fall down?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just make sure.
Or if it doesn't, you have to spend an extra $100,000 in,
reinforcing.
Reinforcing. Yeah. The structural engineer just kind of goes, you don't want to spend the money. I can tell you that from the beginning.
Yeah, unless it was originally designed for it. I don't know. I don't get that, but.
We priced out one. It's a 4th tier from the Gulf, to do the addition with all the structural stuff. And they then decided to tear the house down, and we're going to do a whole nother.
Okay. There's that option, I guess, if you have it.
Right.
I guess in some cases you could justify it, even the expense, because of the land cost.
Correct.
Like, can I really, not everybody's fortunate enough to say, screw it, I'm going to knock this thing down and just build another one.
Right.
So,
the house was old. Their cost basis in the land and the home was much lower.
Justify.
So, and it was an older home. It was built like in the late 90s or something like that. So something that was built in 2016, you're not going to do that. And more than likely a 2016, 2017 house, you could put a third story on. A lot of those homes are built to that, but it's the stuff that was built, post 2012 or pre 2012 would be the ones that would be more problematic to be able to build, and add a story on top of it. But we're doing a ton of stuff where, we've done several like backyard additions, I would call it, where we put in a fancy pool, we'll put in pergolas, a fireplace and a cabana, those type of things. But,
nice.
They turn out to be, costly $250,000, $400,000 projects, but it turns the house from just, a regular house to now it's that oasis that either they always wanted or is going to rent like nobody's business, because everybody wants that.
Yeah.
When they come to the beach, they're coming here and they're going to actually go to the physical beach once, maybe twice. A lot of people, they go to the beach, they get burned and they don't want to go back. They forget to put sunscreen on, they get burned, they don't want to go back. So they're spending time at their pool. They're going to Silver Sands to go shopping or Pier Park to go shopping. So they're going someplace. They're going to the movies. They're doing all the different other activities that's not directly the beach. They're riding up and down their e-bikes on 30 or just all these other activities. But then you put a little putting green in the back, or just some of these fun things that people are excited to do, and they don't even have to leave their quote unquote compound. Yeah.
Well, and some of them are compounds,
right?
They sleep 25 people,
right?
And some of these monster houses. So you've got that many people, and you have a nice backyard to party in, and cook out, whatever that is.
Right.
I get it. So you're looking to continue to grow Fox Construction, my friend?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the format of the podcast?
What's the format?
Format of the podcast. Like you interview people? Do you just talk about construction? You just tell them how great you are, how badass Fox Construction is?
No, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people that our potential clients would get positive and helpful information. Like we're talking to real estate agents and we're asking them pointed questions. Hey, if somebody's coming to 30A, what do they need to be looking out for? When we're talking to the architects, hey, when somebody's coming to design a house, what do they need to be looking for? We had a landscape architect on, and we're like, hey, when they're designing their landscaping packages, because so many of the things, even if they've built in, Atlanta, Birmingham, Nashville, they don't know the planting material here. So we're trying to give them a lot of good information so that way they've got something. So when they either contact us or go to, or decide to build, they're more well informed as to a bunch of different nuances as far as what's available on, not only because of our coastal, but wind and just all the other different factors that come into it as far as, planting. And, one of the things I want to have you on so we can talk about, the advantages, or disadvantages, even the 1031 exchange stuff,
Sure.
Having a good conversation and inform people of that because, there's one of the investors that I'm working with now, he knew about doing it, but he didn't do it until this last one. So there was 3 of them he had to pay taxes on. And this last one, he was able to 1031 it. And he was like, holy cow, that saved me a ton of money.
Yeah. Just keep rolling.
Yeah.
I mean, you can either, you look at it a different way. You got to pull out one way or another at some point. There's strategy.
Pass it on to your kids.
Yeah, there you go. Or you just die and your kid's problem.
No, it's not their problem.
Mm-hmm.
They get it at the cost basis of the current market value. All that depreciation goes away.
Yeah. Just pass it on.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend all mine. I'm not leaving my kids anything.
Good for you.
No. So you brought up, so I actually had that written down and I don't actually write down a lot of stuff, but from your perspective, what should a potential owner of a lot that wants to build a house custom or just a nice home here, what's the one thing you would think they need to be aware of?
Get your team together immediately. By your team, I'm talking about your builder, your architect or designer, and the builder, the designer, and the real estate agent.
Okay.
You want to get those 3 people together. And the reason why I say the real estate agent is because even if you own the lot and you knew you were going to do that, but getting their input is going to be helpful because the average, you may have some data on this, but my understanding from, several agents is that the average life expectancy for somebody to own a home on 30A is 5 to 7 years. So if you're going to do that,
I'd say that's long, but okay.
Well, if you're going to do that, then you're going to have to sell it at some point. So having the builder be able to walk you through the process, because one of the problems that I came across early on was people would come to me and say, hey, I'm buying this lot. How much does it cost to build a house? And, I'm like, okay, it's X, Y, and Z per square foot. They talk to the architect, and the architect talks them into all the fun features. They come back and they say, okay, here's the house. Tell me how much it is. And it's 25% more. And they go, wait, I thought you told me it was this much. And it's like, well, that was before you added this, and this. Perfect example. We're doing a design build project with a client, and, we're doing FaceTime because they're in Chicago. And she goes, well, no, I don't like these. These are single hung windows, meaning the sash goes up and down for those who don't know. And then she goes, no. And she takes her, her video and she shows the window, and it's a casement window. It's one of the full pane windows with the little crank at the bottom that opens it like a doorway. And I was like, oh, that's a casement window. We can do those, but they're $400 more per window, but that's easily doable, and you can get the grid pattern you want. It'll be great. And she's like, okay, let's do that. And, the husband goes, well, there's $400 more a window. And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, how many windows? I said, there's 40 windows in the house. And there was quiet. Yeah. And they're like, $16,000? And I was like, yes, sir. And another pause. And he's like, okay. But they wouldn't have known that. And that'd have been a surprise at the end. There's another home that I built where we're going through the same process, and they were speccing out aluminum clad wood windows, and the pricing, the budget was starting to get up there. And I'm like, hey guys, look, the aluminum clad wood windows, they got great profiles. They're really nice windows, but we can do, cause it's perfectly acceptable, the vinyl windows, and it's going to save you $35,000. And they're like, really? Let's see, send me some pictures. So I sent them several pictures of houses, and they're like, done. $35,000?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, having somebody that can help guide you during that process, and all three of them, the person who's going to end up having to do the drawings, and if you're contacting us, we can do both sides of that, the drawings and the builder side of it, but then having the real estate agent to bounce some of those ideas off. Hey, is this a smart use of space? Hey, I've had people that didn't want any bathtubs in a house. And I always say, talk to your real estate agent because, they don't like bathtubs. They feel like they're archaic and nobody uses bathtubs anymore, but they forgot that when their kids were little, they had to bathe
them in a bathtub.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a rental. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So we always suggest, and I'm like, I'm not going to force you to do it, but go talk to your real estate agent and ask them how they feel about that. So it's being able to have that, those three people involved from basically day one. So that way you don't go off in the wrong direction. And also when you're purchasing the lot, to make sure and talk to the real estate agent so that way they can get as much information or, when you're planning out. Because the first question everybody asks, how much is a lot and where is it located? The second question is, what can I put on the lot and how much is that going to cost?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where I come into it. So the real estate agent can answer the first part, I can answer the second part, and then the designer can start facilitating that second part. Again, they may be able to save money on the windows. They may want to spend more money on the windows. And there's all these different things, those beautiful sliding glass doors that people see, especially from Tennessee when they're coming from Nashville, because they get these steel doors there and they're not wind rated. There's nothing to I say nothing to them. There's some.
I'm saying they're a lot less expensive.
They're a lot less expensive.
Yeah.
It's a third of the cost.
Oh yeah.
And when I tell them,
I'm aware.
And on some of these openings, I'm bidding one right now. It's an 18-foot in the clear. We have to put steel flitch plates in there, and those are not handheld. You have to get a crane on site to do it. So there's another crane mobilization. It's not a tremendous amount, but it's like $4,000 for that whole process of putting that steel in there, which is $4,000 they don't get to use for something else. But informing the client, letting them know that this is happening and this is happening, and allows them to make decisions. Not in real time, because I can't tell them a la carte everything per screw, but I can give them a lot of the broad strokes. And having that team together is really crucial to be able to make informed, good decisions and not be one of those people that buys a lot with the hope of having their beach home and then having to sell the lot a year later because they find out that they can't afford it.
Or can't put what they want to on it.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think what you said was also the realtor portion, in our wheelhouse is the marketability of it. Because whether it's I need to sell it, I need to move it, or more than likely here I want to upgrade.
Right.
I want to move now 2 blocks closer, so I can see the water, whatever that is. Well, it's good information, Chris. I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you?
We are foxluxurybuilder.com.
Come on, you're pushing that social media.
Gosh, I can't remember all the taglines for it.
Fox Construction.
Yeah, it's Fox Construction. You Google Fox Construction, and we've got our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We've got all the different social media stuff out there.
I love it. Well, I know you're a hell of a builder. I appreciate your loyalty to Setco, and I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
All right. Bye, y'all.